Have you ever been to an animal petting zoo? Have you watched when you were there those miniature horses that are attached to a pole and they're walking in that circle in kind of a ring thing? Didn't they really look exhausted and just bored? Do you know where veal calves come from? Have you ever thought, really thought, how hugging an animal can actually make you feel? In today's episode, I was privileged to have Ellie Laks of the Gentle Barn join me. And wait till you hear her story about that long road she's been on in bringing her dream of the Gentle Barn to life. It's a special episode, one you really want to listen to. And definitely, most definitely, one you're just not going to forget. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange. Losses and games, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today has been one I've been just dying to have for a long time. Wait till you hear about this person. If you've ever watched Ellen, you've probably heard about the Gentle Barn, but I actually have the person that founded this thing, and her story is amazing. She's doing amazing things. So please welcome my good new friend, Ellie Laks. Ellie, thanks so much for joining, and I can't wait for everybody to hear your story. If they haven't heard your story, they need to hear it.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's just dig into this thing and talk about, there's so many things, you've got a book out, everybody that's out there listening, The Gentle Barn. It's a great book. If you love animals, you'll love the story and the backbreaking, heartwarming story they have. But let's go back to when you were 7 years old and you got this idea, and let's kind of move forward from there.
All right. Well, when I was a child, I was really fortunate enough to live in St. Louis, Connecticut, Boston, places where there was lakes and woods all around. And so I got to grow up in these magical playgrounds, turning over logs to find magical salamanders, sloshing in the lakes to watch the ducks grow and the tadpoles turn into frogs. I got to go hiking and explore the woods and really connect with nature on a very, very, very deep level. And I saw nature as the best playground ever, and as animals as my best friends, my healers, and my teachers. And I wanted to be out in nature with animals every spare moment. And what really surprised me at such a young age was that the people around me did not see animals the way that I did. They saw them as disposable. They saw them as things we can eat or wear or use for whatever we want, and throw them away when we tire with them. And it was so bizarre to me. I could hear animals calling to me, speaking to me. They could see me and they mirrored back to me that I was wanted and lovable. And I felt like I was privy to these magical creatures that the people around me either didn't see or just took for granted. And so from the time I was 7, I kept saying, when I grow up, I'm going to have a big place full of animals and I'm going to show the world how beautiful they are.
Well, I bring this up all the time. I always find it interesting when you're around animals and how animals tend to choose people they know right away because of certain energies that some people put off. And obviously you've got that amazing energy, but I always find it interesting because the more I do this podcast, the more people I talk, the more I'm aware and a little bit in wonderment of how much animals do for everybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, I have this kind of cartoon image in my mind of how God or the universe or spirit or the creator kind of said to all of us humans, okay, you're going to have to go down to this planet and it's going to be really hard and you're going to have to grow through challenges and evolve through pain. But at the end, it's going to be really, really great. And throughout your journey, you're going to have all of these angels, different shapes, sizes, colors. They're going to be around you. They're going to give you strength. They're going to give you unconditional love and they're going to cheer you on as you go. And I have this idea of this entity looking down on the world today and going, what are you doing? I sent you these angels, but you're eating them. You're destroying them. You're putting them in cages. What are you doing? I just think that we are surrounded by these magical, mythical creatures that we have learned to take for granted, but really they are always here for us. They are here to help us in every step of our way. And every single animal has something to teach us and something to give us. And if we would just look at them with different eyes and realize how blessed we are to have them and try to learn from them, we would be better for it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the most repetitive person in the world. I bring stuff up all the time. But what most people don't seem to realize, the animals, they go through the same thing as us. If we can look at them not just as animals, but a little bit as really our partners here, it'd be a lot better because we would see things different, treat them differently, and do that. I always find I had somebody on the show the other day, and Native Americans. So they looked at animals in a whole different way than we do now, and hopefully we will evolve to actually look at that way too, I think.
Yes, I agree. And that definitely bore repeating, Mark, because, if you look at the way Native Americans walked through nature, they walked past rattlesnakes, they walked past black widows, they just walked past while nature was living just like they were, and they walked among them. If you look at, the early settlers, how they walked through nature, they had big sticks and they were trying to kill the rattlesnakes and kill the black widows and just get rid of animals in their way in this very defensive, scared way, and kind of exuding this scared energy. And I don't know. I go hiking every single day. As a matter of fact, I just got home from a hike with my dogs out in nature. And I try to have that same approach that the Native Americans do and Aboriginal cultures do, walking through nature with reverence and respect and humility, and acknowledging that there's a myriad of animals that are there too, living their lives too. And I'm just humbly trying to walk past in the most respectful way. And it creates a beautiful experience out in nature because I'm not approaching it with fear. I'm approaching it with love and honor.
Well, three words, right? Reverence, respect, and humility is pretty strong words. I'll tell you that much. When I was growing up, I was thinking about what you were saying when you were telling me that. My brother and I were, we grew up in Missouri too, like you did, and we were out in the woods all the time. That's what we did. Unfortunately, as the world's growing around us, that's just not that accessible for a lot of people. So they don't get to have that. I guess I use the word sense of wonderment a little bit. You're out there just hanging out and doing it. I have so many great memories, and my brother's 2 years younger than me, but we grew up together doing that. That's what we did.
And I'm assuming that you and I are around the same age. And back when we were kids, it was assumed that we were going to leave the house after breakfast and not return until the lamp lights turned on. And I have such beautiful memories of riding bikes around the neighborhood and all the kids were out, or just merely laying on the lawn as the sun went down and watching the bats come out and start to flutter around in the sky. And then when it was finally dark, you went home. And that was a given. And I think one of the reasons why I founded the Gentle Barn is to give people in the city who know nothing but noise and concrete and buildings and high tech and busyness a place, a sanctuary to come and find our way back to nature and find our connection back to animals and find those still quiet spaces where you can clear your mind, breathe deeply, and connect with other creatures like you and I did in our childhoods.
Oh, absolutely. And the problem is, with technology, while it's a good thing for many things, it also takes us away from all the other stuff. That the innocence, I guess, is a good word. I like the word innocence. I have 3 kids myself, and one of the things that made me sad growing up, because this is a story for another day, but I'm the oldest of 5, and I was the last one that didn't realize there wasn't a Santa Claus because I just believed in the magic.
Oh.
My parents had to call me in one day and had to tell me because they started being embarrassed for me because I would I denied that there wouldn't be a Santa Claus. And, having kids, they find out so much earlier where they couldn't just, they can't just enjoy it.
That's true. And if you look at every single other creature besides human beings, every animal species, if you look at Native Americans, if you look at Aboriginal cultures, every single one of them makes time each day to spend in that still quiet,
Hmm.
to meditate, to connect with our higher selves, to just breathe and to kind of let down and stop thinking and be. And we as a society are the only ones that don't do that. We're constantly doing and having, but we're not being.
Right.
So I think that that's one of the greatest things that the animals offer us is a space, an opportunity, and the inspiration to sit with them and be. And that's where we find our greatest ideas. That's where we connect back to ourselves. That's where we remember who we are and what we've come to do. And that all creatures, no matter how different we look, we're basically all the same.
Well, one thing I do absolutely. I mean, I look at that and, the stillness, quiets your mind so you can actually think. But I was thinking about so I went through your whole book, and one of the word I thought about you, and we hadn't even met yet, was, would you call yourself stubborn at all?
I would call myself extremely stubborn.
I know. I absolutely love that because I am too. Once I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. And that's kind of my segue in to Mary and your stubbornness when you got married. Can you tell that story? Because I think it's the greatest story ever.
Yeah, so the Gentle Barn was my dream since I was 7, but I had no idea how to start it. So I procrastinated for a very, very long time. Still working with animals. In college, I had a dog walking, dog training, and dog boarding business. As soon as I started making some money, I went to the shelters and started pulling out animals that were on death row and rehoming them. But I still had this dream of having a Gentle Barn nagging at me, but I didn't know how to do it. And as a young adult living in a little house with a half-acre backyard, I was doing an errand one day and saw a petting zoo I'd never seen before. So I went in just to be nosy. And what I found there was a lot of suffering animals. The goats and sheep had toenails that were 2 feet long, deformed legs. They were all filthy dirty. Even though it was over 100 degrees, nobody had water. They were beating the ponies to keep going round and round and round in exhausted circles. But more disturbing than the terrible shape of the animals was the fact that the place was full of humans and not one of them could see the suffering in front of them. And it literally made me sick to my stomach. So I had to get out of there, and I ran for the door, and blocking the exit was a very old goat looking like she was about to drop dead any second. And she looked me in the eyes, she stopped me in my tracks, and she asked me for help. So I returned her gaze and looked her over. She was indeed in very bad shape. And I said, you know what? Yes, I could take a goat home. So I went to find the owners and said, hey, can I have that goat? And they said, no. And I said, well, can I buy her? Name your price. And they said, no, leave me alone. And I said, well, she's dying. So I'm going to stay here till you say yes. And I stayed there for 12 days. On the 13th day, the lady came and found me and said, take the goat and get the heck out of here. And I brought Mary home, and I got a vet to remove her tumors and trim her overgrown toenails, teach me how to massage her deformed legs so she could walk again. And a few months later, she was bouncing around my backyard as happy as could be. And I knew in that moment that that's who I was and that's what I've come to do. And I had to do more of it.
Well, your journey is pretty amazing. I know Mary was kind of the inception of the Gentle Barn, and you didn't have a name for it at that time. But what I think amazes me about it, and we'll get into this more, is how much you've learned, literally how to trim a goat's nails. I mean, all the stuff you've had to learn that you had no skill for whatsoever. And then to look where you are today, it's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, I like to think about those founding animals. They really put me through the Gentle Barn University, those first 10 years, learning how much to feed them, learning how to trim their hooves, learning how to keep them healthy, what not to do, how to listen to them, how to hear them, how to set up a routine so that they felt safe and secure. They taught me everything.
Well, aside from that, and you taking care of the animals, there's that business side. You had to find money to do that. And anybody that's worked into the nonprofit world knows what a job that is. I mean, jumping into something you don't really know what you're doing, and then realizing, okay, now I got to be able to feed these guys and shelter them and do all this other stuff. That's crazy.
It was a lot. And I'm a healer. So I'm very good at communicating with animals, healing animals, nurturing them, resuscitating them. Like that's my superpower. Raising money, setting up fundraising events, even setting up an office with a website, like that just was not in my skill set. And so I was floundering until a very important volunteer came in who started helping me in the barnyard, but I soon found out that he was from corporate America and asked him if he would help me in the office. And he set me up a website with a donate button. He set up that first fundraiser. He got on the board of directors. And he really is that brain part, like that business part side of the Gentle Barn. And a year later, we fell in love and joined forces to expand our mission. So Jay Weiner is the co-founder of the Gentle Barn. I like to say that he's the brains and I'm the heart of the Gentle Barn.
Well, it takes all kinds, and I kind of feel like I know Jay too through the book. The whole journey is an amazing journey.
It was amazing. I mean, falling in love unexpectedly with this volunteer and joining forces to not feel so alone, to be able to accomplish so much more than I ever dreamed of. I mean, I knew at 7 that I was going to have a big place full of animals and show the world how beautiful they were, but I didn't know that we would have 3 locations, almost 4. I didn't know that we would have over 200 animals. I didn't know that we would have 68 staff and 1,500 volunteers. I didn't know that we would have 3 million people watching us on social media. So the reach, the voice, and the impact that these animals are having is just incredible. And I'm so happy.
Let's go back to so you get Mary and you're at this petting zoo, and there, if I remember correctly, didn't they have a horse that you got out of there as well?
Yeah, they had a miniature horse named Katie, who is to this day, 25 years later, still the angriest animal I think I've ever met. She was so angry you could see the steam coming out of her ears from the horrific way that she had been treated. And you would even look in her direction, her ears would go straight back, warning you that if you came an inch closer, she was going to charge. And so I spent a lot of time in her formative years just ignoring her, really, and staying out of her way and showing her that I didn't want anything from her. And the more she realized that there was no demands on her, the more she started to relax and chill out and then just kind of enjoy her food and her water and her sunbathing and know that we weren't coming for her. And eventually, once she really rested in that space and let her guard down, then she started becoming curious about us. So she started following me around, wondering what I'm doing, what I'm about. And eventually that led to me being able to pet her and scratch her and give her treats and love her. And by the time she passed away, she came into the Gentle Barn completely alone and hating everyone. And by the time she passed away, she had a line of 25 volunteers lining up to say goodbye to her and hugging her and kissing her and telling her how beautiful she was.
Oh.
So she really, really transformed.
Well, one of the things that I find, and I want to get into some more of the animals, but as I mentioned, I do a lot of refugee work with children, but I always find that, and when I'm doing it, and generally in conflict zones, so these guys are going through some pretty tough times. They've been displaced from their families and all that, and just bringing a smile to them. But I generally get more from them than I think they get from me. And I got to believe that all your volunteers, she probably had some lessons to teach everybody else as well.
It's so interesting. I completely agree with you. In the early years of the Gentle Barn, I wanted volunteers to come in and be the emotional support for these animals. Me, and then later Jay, and then later, some staff. We were cleaning the poop and we were grooming and feeding and watering and taking care of kind of the top needs. But as we moved along and got more and more and more animals, those animals needed to know that they mattered. They needed somebody to be able to scratch their bellies and hold them and kiss them and love them, things that our staff didn't have time to do. So I always wanted the volunteers to be that emotional support, to come in and really love the animals. And it was funny because in those formative years, I would reach out to volunteers really like thinking I was invading their time, asking too much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to ask people for too much, really kind of feeling embarrassed that I was reaching out and asking them for help. But one after the other would come to me and say, through volunteering with these animals, you helped me recover from the death of my mom, or through being with these animals,
Right.
I've been suffering from depression and they made me happy, or I was suffering from isolation and they gave me a community. One after the other, I realized here I was embarrassed to ask these volunteers for help, but the volunteers would relay that they were getting so much more out of it than the animals were. And I mean, I think that that's what it is. When we're in service and giving, the giver ends up getting the greatest gift. I really do believe that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in my experience, always been, and I think we all have a tendency, regardless of what you're going through, and just in a normal life, you go through this, oh, woe is me kind of thing. And then you go and you're working with some animal that has had probably a way worse life than you've had. And they start giving you a little bit of love. You start realizing, whoa, it's not me. It's not me at all. And these guys are there to kind of remind us that too, I think.
That's absolutely right. At the Gentle Barn, we not only rehabilitate animals that have nowhere else to go and no one wants, and we give them vet care and acupuncture and acupressure, and we resuscitate their bodies, their minds, their hearts, and we give them sanctuary for the rest of their lives so that they can get that ongoing care for the rest of their lives. But when they're ready, we partner with them to heal people with the same stories of trauma and connect people to the love and magic of animals. And there are so many hurting people out there, whether they're in foster agencies, inner city schools, classes for the disabled, drug rehabilitation programs, domestic violence shelters, war veteran centers, homeless shelters, people that are really, really suffering. And of course, there's a myriad of just individuals that are living normal lives, not in an agency, but they're hurting too, especially after the pandemic. And there are so many people, listen, I think talk therapy is great, right? When we're willing to share our experiences,
Hmm.
dissect it for its lessons, and be able to move forward, I think that that's really good work. But there's many people that are too shut down, too angry, too sad, too embarrassed to really rummage through their past, and they don't want to talk. And so traditional talk therapy really can't offer someone a solution that's not willing to talk. And I think that that's where the animals come in. The animals at the Gentle Barn don't require hurting people to talk. They embrace them. They make them laugh. They wag their tails. They jump up and down. They remind people that have suffered that there is still joy. They offer healing and hope in their gentle embraces. They model moving forward and resilience because all of our animals have gone through hell and back, but have now found family and joy and happily ever afters. And it reminds people that if they keep going, that they can end up with their happily afters as well.
Well, I had a guy on the show he's actually a counselor, grief counselor for people who've lost pets. Now they could be lost that they just where somebody stole the pet or the pet had passed away. One of the things he says, and it resonated with me a little bit, he talks about how the relationship between animals and humans is different than a human to human. With human to human, even if you're talking to a therapist, you still got that human relationship, they may say something you don't like or whatever. Where animals, it's just a pure relationship between you and them. All they want to do is spend time with you or just be there. So you don't have this. You have a different relationship. It's a little bit more pure, probably more helpful in even somebody going through a hard time, I would think.
Yeah, I agree. And especially humans that have been hurt by humans, it's hard to talk to a human about your pain because on some level you might feel
Right.
that you're being judged. But with an animal, I mean, there is no judgment, there is only unconditional love. They give you everything. And also, I think that when we're with animals, we feel like the best versions of ourselves. I know that when I'm out in the barnyard, I feel like the best me that I can be. So it makes me feel good about myself. It makes me feel like I want to be better.
Hmm. Their communication's different, right? You're just getting licked or hugged or stomped on or whatever else versus figuring out what that conversation is. It's just more of an emotional conversation, I guess.
Agreed.
So the Gentle Barn started, I think, in 1999. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I opened the Gentle Barns doors in August 25th, 1999.
So you're in your 24th year?
We just celebrated our 24th anniversary, so we were heading to our 25th.
Wow, that's amazing. So there's a lot of things. There's so much to talk to you about. It drives me crazy. So so you started in the Valley, in San Fernando Valley, for you guys that aren't from California, just north of LA, and then you moved into Santa Clarita. And by the way, what I love about your book in the story is you really rely on, you're intuitive, and your intuition seems to be right on figuring out what you want to do. When you guys kind of moved out there and you looked at the different properties and found the one you have, was pretty amazing.
I have had so many life lessons teaching me again and again and again to trust my instincts. When I ignore my instincts, I get slapped hard. I have so many stories. And so I've really finally once and for all learned to listen to my intuition and trust it. It's the best compass I have. And so, yeah, in those early years, starting the Gentle Barn in my little half-acre backyard, realizing that after 4 years we were bursting at the seams and the neighbors weren't too pleased.
Yeah, with Paige.
Yeah.
Oh, I know Paige's story. I don't think I like her.
You know what? It's so funny because the neighborhood really supported me in the beginning. You know, with each new animal, everybody came over and cheered me on and like met the new animals, and they seemed so in support. But then this neighbor moved in next door to me. And at first she said that she picked the house because I was there. But then, as we started growing, she started becoming more and more upset with what we were doing next door. And it came down to a fence.
I know.
I had built a brand new fence 7 years prior. Sorry. What am I talking about? Just 1 or 2 years prior. It was a perfect, beautiful wood fence. And then when she moved in, she wanted me to tear it down and build a new one.
And pay half of it. That's insane.
It's crazy. So I said, I just put in a new fence. It's perfectly workable. It's beautiful. And she was like, no, but I want the good side on my yard. And I mean, it's such a simple, silly thing, but that's what started the beginning of the end, because she got so vindictive that she started calling the authorities on me, which of course couldn't find anything because I was the example of how to take care of animals. But we reached a phase where it was like, either we need to shut down and stay where we are, or we need to move. And so we finally searched and searched and searched and found this beautiful, beautiful place in Santa Clarita where we are located right now. And it was funny because once we finally built the barns and put in the fences and settled in our animals and reopened our programs on this beautiful 5-acre property, I realized, you know what? I have been hating her all along, thinking she was such a curse. But the truth is that if everything was nice in that neighborhood, I would still be in that little half-acre backyard. My angel came disguised as a vicious neighbor to get us out of that half-acre and onto our beautiful 5-acre where we're located now, and we could rescue way more animals and heal way more people. And so I actually ended up sending her a thank you letter.
Well, it's funny. You listened to it on Audible, but I thought, truthfully, I thought, you're making lemonade out of lemons.
I mean, that's all we can do, right? That's life.
Right. Well, you did a good job. The funny thing, she bought that house with the fence being there. She liked it when she bought it, but she didn't like it when she was there for a while. I think this is crazy. So at that time, though, how many animals did you had when you were moving to Santa Clarita?
We just had a handful. We had like 60 animals, including chickens.
A handful is not 60, by the way. That's not a handful.
I guess in my world, that is a handful. But yeah, we had chickens and turkeys, and we had some bunny rabbits who...
Oh, that's part of the bunny rabbits going into her land, too, when you guys had to block that off. I just remember that.
Yeah.
One of the things I was really impressed of is that when you moved to Santa Clarita, you guys didn't really have any money, first off. Secondly, you guys did all the work. Most people don't realize and I'm sure now when they come there, if they knew the whole story, if they hadn't read the book or didn't, know much about it, you guys did everything. You put the fence in, you dug the holes, you did everything on your own.
We sure did. And I don't care how old I get, I will never forget being out in the pasture under the blazing, boiling sun with Jay holding on to this auger that standing still weighed a lot.
Yeah.
But then once we turned it on, it started jumping up and down and wiggling, and it was everything I could to hold on to that thing, trying to create holes in the ground so we could build a fence for our horses. I will never forget that. That was terrible.
But you know what the great thing about that is, at least my experience is, when you do it yourself, I'll guarantee you have a better appreciation than having somebody else do it from back then. I know now you guys probably have the economics to have some people come in and do that, but looking back on it now, I don't think you'd ever have more. You probably wouldn't appreciate as much as you have now, even after all the sweat and toil and torture that you guys are doing. You just appreciate it more.
I think you're right. I mean, being able to look around the property at the over 250 trees that we literally planted with our bare hands, the fences that we put in, designing it exactly the way that I wanted, the gardens that we built. There's a lot of pride on what we've done. And it connects us more deeply to the land and to the mission because we built it with our own blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, I mean, you guys totally owned it. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I don't, I know you're busy. So I've got, again, I could talk to you for 17 hours. This would be the easiest thing in the world for me to do. I'm telling you, I'm just so curious. And I can tell you the trees you planted pepper trees, right?
We planted California pepper trees because they are deciduous and they're non-toxic. So we would have
Yeah.
beautiful green and shade all year round, and it wouldn't hurt any of the animals. As a matter of fact, most of the animals love eating their leaves.
Well, that'll say how much I paid attention to everything. I remember everything about it because to me, I'm just so enthralled with everything there. But one of the things I want to get into, and you bring it up in the book, but I think it's, I'm sure some people know, but most people don't know, is let's talk about the calves you basically rescued from the dairies and how the whole background of the dairy cows and how you got there. Because I didn't know that. And I think for people listening, if they didn't know, it's something they should probably hear.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's a story I love to tell because it's so informative. So most of us, and I didn't know until somebody told me, the way that we get milk from a cow is by getting that cow pregnant because a cow is a mammal just like we are. So I have 3 kids. After I gave birth to them, I had breast milk for them. Once they weaned, my milk dried up. And of course, I don't have milk now, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing with cows. And I think that in kindergarten, we're taught that cows are this magical animal that has milk spewing out of them, but it's actually the farthest thing from the truth. The truth about cows is they're just mammals. The only way that they could have breast milk is by giving birth to a calf. So in the dairy industry, they impregnate them all. Each dairy has like between 10 and 30,000 cows. They get them all pregnant. But then when the babies are born, they don't want the babies. They just want the breast milk. So they take the babies away, put them in veal crates for a few weeks so that the meat stays all mushy.
Hmm.
And then at a few weeks old, they go to slaughter for veal and the breast milk is stolen for people to drink. I had no idea. And when I first started the Gentle Barn, there was a volunteer that told me that, and I went vegan on the spot because I wanted nothing to do with causing that kind of pain
Sure.
to a screaming mom who's searching for a baby or a baby put into a box instead of being next to his mom. So one of the things that Jay is great at is forging relationships with the owners of slaughterhouses, stockyards, auction houses, and even abuse cases. He's kind of a chameleon, so he can forge really wonderful relationships, which gives us the ability to save animals that we otherwise couldn't. And so he created a relationship with an auction house here in Los Angeles that was starting to get, the auction house is designed to bring in animals and then people come and bid on those animals and take them away, like the slaughterhouse trucks. And, they just take all these animals away.
Hmm.
And what was starting to happen is more and more cows were going to slaughter pregnant. And so more and more babies were born at the auction house. And the auction house wasn't set up to care for or sell babies. They were set up to deal with adult animals. So this auction house owner reached out and forged a relationship with Jay, talking about when there are downed animals that we can't turn to profit, when there are babies born at the slaughterhouse to moms that are pregnant, will you come and get them? And Jay, of course, said yes.
Hmm.
And so one day we got a phone call from the auction house owner saying that there were 6 calves that were so sick they couldn't stand up. And once they're downed like that, it's against the law to process them for profit. And he asked Jay to come and get them off his hands. So Jay drove there. It was a several-hour drive to there and then loading them up and then home. So, it was going to take a few hours for him to get back. while he was gone, I was setting up the nursery and I was putting soft straw bedding. I was getting all the bottles and the formula ready. I was getting nutritional products like sun chlorella algae superfood ready to put into their bottles. I was calling veterinarians so they could meet us at the Gentle Barn once the cows arrived. And I was calling around to other sanctuaries because this was our very first veal calf rescue. And I know that they were going to come in very, very sick. So I called around to 4 of the biggest sanctuaries at the time in the world. And I said to them, what do I need to know, do, have, or be in order to save these babies? This is our first rescue for veal calves. I want to be equipped. And all 4 of them said to me, the only thing you need to know is that they're going to die. It was horrible. And I hung up the phone and said, okay, what can I do differently than they have done?
Your stubbornness kicked in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, not on my watch. So I said, what can I do differently? And I flashed back to a tour of one of the sanctuaries a few years back where there was a baby calf in a barn by herself. And they were priding themselves on all the physical healing they were doing, right? The veterinarian was doing injections and antibiotics and exams and all this stuff. But in between vet visits, this tiny little helpless calf who was very sick and had no mom was just standing in the middle of the stall, completely despondent.
Oh, so sad.
I know. And I remember seeing this at the time and going, this doesn't feel right. Why isn't there someone with this baby? So flashing back to that, I said, that's it. Instead of leaving them alone to feel sick, not have moms or anything to live for, and just poke and prod them with vet care, I need to give them something to live for. I need to give them family, and I need to give them nurturing in lieu of their moms. And so by the time Jay arrived with those calves, I had called hundreds of people and signed up hundreds of people to 4-hour shifts all through the day and all through the night so that those babies would not be alone for even 5 minutes. And it was those volunteers that put their arms around these calves, put hydrogen peroxide down their spines to lower their fevers, sang to them, read out loud to them, told them what their life would look like at the Gentle Barn and how happy they would be. And it gave those calves something to live for, and those calves made it. And since then, we've rescued many, many, many orphaned animals, puppies with parvo, orphaned goats, and of course, other veal calves. And they've made it because, yes, a hurting animal needs vet care, but they more importantly need something to live for.
Well, one of the things that I thought was pretty amazing about that story, obviously you guys figured out, is you couldn't get the volunteers and you guys couldn't be around all the other animals because they would have, because they had pneumonia or something like that. Is that where you guys had them so sick that you guys, they'd have to leave and not mix with the other animals until they got healthy enough to be in, I guess, the herd?
Yeah, so there were 3 things going on. One was those calves had to be in very, very strict quarantine. Usually quarantine is for 30 days, but it's 30 days after they were sick.
Right.
And so they actually were sick for 7 months.
Wow. By the way, I say wow a lot. I apologize now. I hate every time I listen to my podcast, I hear wow, I just cringe.
Well, there's nothing wrong with saying wow. So yeah, they were in quarantine for 7 months. And so number one, we had to be very careful not to transmit their illnesses, their funguses. I mean, they had a huge variety of illnesses they were dealing with. And they had conjunctivitis that is very contagious.
Mhm.
They had pneumonia, which is very contagious. They had staph infection in their lungs, which is very contagious. And they had a fungus across their entire bodies that we had to heal. So all of those things are very contagious. So we had to make sure that we didn't transfer that to our other animals. So that was very, very important. The second thing is that Jay is allergic to straw, and it was in the winter, and that straw was the only thing that was keeping them warm. And so Jay wasn't able to go in there much. And when he did, he actually ended up getting pneumonia from the straw.
Oh, I that's not in the book. Oh, wow, that's crazy.
And then number 3, I had a tiny 2-year-old baby that I was caring for at the same time. And so not only did I want to spend time with the calves and heal them and nurture them, but I had my own baby that I had to take care of. And so that's where the volunteers really came in, while we were taking care of our other animals and taking care of our own daughter and trying to make sure that nothing got transferred. When we couldn't be in there, the volunteers were. And so between me and Jay, our staff, our volunteers, those cows were never alone.
So for the entire 7 months,
Yeah.
and they were in shifts like 4-hour shifts or something like that. Is that what I read? 6 hours or something like that?
Yeah. I thought that any less than 4 hours wouldn't be very effective, and
Right.
anything more than 4 hours would not be sustainable. So I settled on 4-hour shifts for all the people because it was short enough for them to want to do it again, but long enough for them to really bond with the cows while they were here.
That's an incredible story. I mean, that's a lot of volunteers, a lot of hours. 7 months is not a short period of time, and your stubbornness that go along with it. And so, are you still getting veal calves now, or is that? I know what veal is, obviously, but I don't understand how it works other than what you've told me.
Yeah, we are. And also during the pandemic, we had a lot of cows that gave birth inside the slaughterhouse. And so what happened when the pandemic broke was that all these farmers with these huge herds saw that the slaughterhouses were shutting down and didn't want to get stuck with all these animals they had to feed that they couldn't make money off of. So they panicked and sent all of their herd to the slaughterhouse. And in the meat and dairy industry, those cows are kept eternally pregnant. So they were all sent to the slaughterhouse and they were all pregnant.
Oh my
And so
God.
most of them were being slaughtered pregnant, but many of them, because of the stress and the timing, ended up giving birth on the kill floor. And the slaughterhouse owner would call us to come get them. And so during the pandemic, we were dealing with a lot of moms, a lot of extremely sick babies. As a matter of fact, I had a calf that we got from the slaughterhouse where we were not able to rescue the mom. And we brought him home and he was dying. And Jay and I brought him into our house to save him.
That's unbelievable. And then let's go to there's another story I want to talk about too, is the backyard butcher. I mean, Jay's a superhero.
Agreed.
In the way he was able to get somebody. So just kind of touch upon it, and then how you guys, I know you kept going to the health department, all the different departments trying to get it happen. When he was able to talk him into be able, the guy's a knucklehead. The guy, well, first of all, it's a horrible human being anyways, but the butcher, but Jay being able to get film of this guy talking about this stuff still blows my mind.
You know, it's something that still makes our heads shake just to think of this guy that was so heinously cruel and egregious to these animals, but had no clue that he was doing anything wrong and was willing to talk about it on camera. I mean, it was crazy. So there was this man in Santa Clarita, not far from the Gentle Barn. We discovered him because we were trying to rescue turkeys. It was
Thanksgiving.
just before Thanksgiving. And we wanted to rescue some turkeys. And somebody told us about this guy that had turkeys. And so Jay went to pick up the remaining turkeys, alive, of course, to bring them home to the Gentle Barn. And while he was there, he looked around and there was so much suffering. And he knew this is absolutely not right. And so he befriended the guy and started chit-chatting and talking to him and learning more. And the guy was saying that what he does is he goes to the auctions and gets very old or very sick animals for $1, brings them home, doesn't really give them shelter, water, or food. If they die, who cares? It's just $1. And if they make it, then he butchers them and sells the meat to the community. And he also does satanic rituals. He did like crazy, disgusting rituals for some very, very sick individuals. And he very proudly talked about it like, you and I would talk about, oh, I'm a mechanic and I fix cars. Like it's just that normal.
The crazy thing is that, because you guys, once you realized what was going on, you reported it to all the various different agencies. And I'm not trying to bag on the agencies, but it took you guys, and again, your stubbornness to make sure that something happened with this guy.
Yeah. So Jay and I couldn't sleep at night thinking about those animals suffering. And so Jay reached out to the authorities, and it's hilarious. The authorities, their way of dealing with it was to call the guy and let him know that on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, they're going to pay him a visit. So of course, on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, there was hay out, there was clean water,
Yeah.
everything. Like he knew how to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so the authorities just really didn't seem to be willing or able to do anything about it until they had very hard evidence. And so Jay launched an undercover investigation that went on for 4 years. And he finally got everything on camera delivered to the authorities. And the authorities finally arrested him, sent him to jail, took the rest of his animals and brought them to the Gentle Barn.
It just makes me angry even now thinking about it. Just I can't believe anybody can get away with that. But at least you guys were the angels in this one for sure. So let's move forward to, back then you had, I mean, this is years ago. So now you guys have, and I don't know this part of the story because it's not when I was able to find out. So you guys have grown so much. Typically in Santa Clarita, how many animals do you typically have there now? 200 or something like that? Is that the right number?
We have 200 animals across the 3 locations because we're
Okay.
located in Santa Clarita, California, Nashville, Tennessee, and St. Louis, Missouri. But in Santa Clarita exclusively, we have approximately, I don't know, 90 to 100 animals.
Oh, I have a question for you that I thought of too, and I know you said you're good on the fly, but one of the things I was thinking about, and you touched upon it, but didn't get too deep in it. You've got so many, at-risk kids or foster kids and special need kids that are coming out there all the time. By the way, I think it's awesome, and what a great opportunity for these kids. And some of them come in angry and leave with a smile on their face. Have you had any kids that have come back and end up being either working with you guys or volunteering down the road once they got older or anything? Do you have any of those kind of stories? Maybe you don't, but I was thinking if I was one of those kids, I may want to come back and hang out with you guys.
Yeah, we have. We've had many kids come back and volunteer as, grown-ups. We've had a lot of them come back and bring their families and introduce them to us.
Oh, that's great.
I had the most wonderful experience not too terribly long ago where this beautiful 30-year-old woman came bouncing up to me on an open to the public Sunday. And she said, "Do you remember me?" And she looked very familiar, but I couldn't place her.
Hmm.
And she said, 15 years ago, when I was 15 years old, I was part of a foster care program. I had been sex trafficked. So I had been through a lot of really horrible things and then finally got saved and got put into this foster care system. And I was planning to end my own life. I had been through horrible things that no one could relate to. I saw everyone else as normal and me as just the most abnormal person. Nobody could understand me. Nobody could understand what I'd been through. I was carrying a lot of shame and secrecy about what I had been through. And I was literally planning my own suicide. And the agency brought me to the Gentle Barn, and walking around the Gentle Barn, meeting the horses, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, chickens, turkeys, peacocks, llamas, emus, that all had stories also.
Hmm.
And it made me feel normal. It made me realize everyone has a story and I have mine. And it made me feel less ashamed. It made me feel normal. And it made me determined to live a normal and good life. And so she started getting good grades in high school, went on to graduate college, got a career, fell in love, has a partner, and now has 2 children. And she brought them all to the Gentle Barn to meet me.
Oh,
She told me, she says, "I just wanted you to know that the animals at the Gentle Barn saved my life."
those kind of stories, just that one story, when I do the refugee work, I always, when I go on these trips, and I'm not gone that long just because of my normal life, but if I'm gone for 2 or 3 weeks, there's always that one story that resonates with you and you go, okay, there's a reason why I'm here.
Yeah. And you know what? It just that one difference, that one person that pivoted or expanded or evolved or found joy because of you, it makes everything worth it.
Exactly. I mean, the whole point is that you don't need a lot of stuff. That one little thing, it's kind of like when you have kids and the kid's driving you crazy for whatever reason, and then they do something to make you smile, and you go, damn it, I want to be mad at you, but I can't.
Yeah.
You've got 3. I have 3 too, so you totally know.
Yeah.
So what I don't know is, okay, so you've been doing this forever. I guess we should talk a little bit about, one of the big breakthroughs for you guys to be able to help raise money is Ellen and Portia found out about you and were great supporters from you. I guess I'm plugging for them, but the reality is that really helped put you on the map and raise the money because it's not inexpensive to do what you're doing.
There is literally not a day that goes by that I don't think of Ellen and Portia and have gratitude for them. They changed everything. We were doing a painting project, and as one of the volunteers were leaving, she said, "I know a lot of people in the industry, so I'll spread the word." And we said, "Oh yeah, that would be wonderful." Didn't think much of it.
Right.
3 weeks later, it was Portia that she knew. And she told Portia all about the Gentle Barn. And the Ellen Show was calling saying they wanted Portia to come out and have a tour of the Gentle Barn, and they're going to film it and put it on the Ellen Show. And the next thing I knew, I was on the Ellen Show when they aired that segment, and Ellen gave us a $50,000 donation for a cow barn we were trying to build. that we built because of her. And then they would come out and name animals and then have them on the show. They would have other celebrity guests come out. They would talk about us on their show with celebrities that they were talking to that were sponsoring animals of ours. And it literally put us on the map. It changed the Gentle Barns forever. We still, and it's 14 years ago, but we still have people that are coming literally from all over the world to visit because of Ellen and Portia. I will never forget their kindness, their generosity, their authentic love of animals, and the way that they helped us.
Well, the thing that's most impressive to me, and we all have that friend that has a friend that's a celebrity, blah blah blah. But what I love about it is it wasn't a one and done thing. They just continued to really support you, which you guys should just embrace the fact that they did that and how wonderful that was. And that's a legitimate person that really cares about what you're doing.
Ellen and Portia are two of the kindest human beings I've ever met, and they truly love animals in a very real way. And I think that they would do anything to help them. And they really helped our animals. They helped us save more animals than we would have been able to without them.
Mhm.
They helped more people come to meet animals and open their hearts to them. They helped us go national. I'm just really, really super grateful for them, and I always will be.
Well, and that was kind of my segue into it because I don't know. I know you've got the location in Missouri and Tennessee. I know the goal, at least you talk about at the end of the book, the goal is to be in every state or even worldwide at some point to have these sanctuaries for these animals. So walk me through, because I really only know Santa Clarita and I don't know what happened with Missouri. I don't know what came first, Missouri, Tennessee, and how that came about and, what's in the future after that.
So we were in California, moved to our 5-acre location in Santa Clarita. We were doing well. Ellen and Portia came in the scene. Now we've got hundreds of people visiting us. It was incredible. And Jay and I have always wanted to go national, but it wasn't the right time. We didn't have the funds. It was just kind of like not ever right. And then we got a phone call from someone in Nashville, Tennessee, about a cow that had lost his foot and he was hobbling around on 3 legs in terrible, terrible pain. And one of the rancher's friends was reaching out to try to find help for this cow. And she had called 200 organizations and none of them could help this cow. And so she called out to us saying, I've been following you for a really long time. I've got this situation. I know that you're far away, but can you at least give me advice? Now, 3 days prior, out of nowhere, I told my husband about my upcoming birthday that I don't want to do anything but rescue a cow. So I know, it's so weird. And so when Jay got the phone call, he was like, okay, I think this is Ellie's birthday present. So he found a bovine surgeon 3 hours away from Nashville in Knoxville. He found a company willing to make a prosthetic foot for the cow. And he came to me and said, happy birthday, we're going to Tennessee. And we went to Nashville, Tennessee, met Dudley, brought him to the hospital. He spent about 5 months in the hospital getting amputations and surgeries and getting fitted for the prosthetic, having underwater treadmill therapy and acupuncture and all kinds of rehabilitation. And once he was finally acclimated to the prosthetic and ready to be discharged, by that time he was world famous. There were literally millions of people around the world watching his recovery and sending him boxes of peaches and bags of peppermint candies. I mean, it was amazing. So all of these fans had supported the medical bills. And we just didn't want to drive him to California. We just thought like, that's going to be a grueling trip.
Right.
He's going to live on sand. The sand's going to go into his prosthetic. It just didn't seem right. So we went to our board of directors and said, would really like to go national, would really like to open a Gentle Barn for Dudley in Tennessee. And they said, yes.
Dudley Do right?
Dudley Do Right. And that was 8 years ago. So that was eight, almost coming up on 9 years ago that we opened in Tennessee. And then now 6 going on 7 years ago, there were a group of cows, and you might have seen this, it was big national news. There was 6 cows that escaped a slaughterhouse in St. Louis and were running through the streets. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I totally do.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, they got rounded up and sent back to the slaughterhouse. But by then it was big national news and the community was saying, oh, they have to live. They have to live. So there was a group of community members that opened a GoFundMe and raised their freedom money and convinced the slaughterhouse owner to take the money in exchange for their lives to go to a sanctuary.
Right.
And so the owner agreed. And we were watching this from California, like everybody, like everybody else through the news.
Yeah.
And we assumed that somebody would come and get them, and that would be the end of a happy story. But 4 days later, nobody stepped up. And so the owner of the slaughterhouse announced 4 days later that he was sick of waiting and he was going to process them in the morning. So our phone started ringing. Kelly and David Backus started calling us, among many others, saying that we have to save them. So Jay got on a red-eye flight, flew there in time to stop their slaughter in the morning, used the GoFundMe money for their freedom, brought them to a hospital to be treated for all their injuries and funguses and infections, whatever, and then found a foster home for them to hold them until we could figure out what next steps were. And I was holding the fort in California, but I finally flew out there to meet the St. Louis Six. That's what they were called.
Great name.
Yeah.
By the way, your names, we'll get this in a second. I love all your names, Karma, all the ones you've got. They're great names.
Thank you. So once I met them, I realized that they had come with a story to share with the world, and we had to help them. So we opened our own GoFundMe, raised the money for our property in 3 weeks, and opened the third Gentle Barn in St. Louis, Missouri, about going on 7 years ago.
Where in St. Louis is it, just out of curiosity?
It's in Ditmer. It's in Jefferson County.
Okay, Jefferson County. That's right. A matter of fact, my mom, like I said, lives in Warrenton, and I was trying to tell her, and she was being my mom, so we never got into it. But I said, "Mom, it's in Jefferson County. You know where that is." It's pretty funny. So, do you still only have the 6 out there? Is that all grown out there in both locations, or you picking up more and more cows and pigs and turkeys and everything else?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All 3 locations are equipped with horses, donkeys, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, chickens, turkeys. We have a duck in St. Louis named Jemima Puddle Duck.
Oh, I need to tell you a story. This is another story about me. So, everybody, please have patience. I know I like to talk. When I was in college, I adopted, as literally the day they were born, 2 ducks I called Riff and Raft. That I raised 2 ducks in college, and I would go to class with a leash on both of them. They would go to class and they'd be honking outside of my classroom window. I got in college. I had 2 ducks. So you and I were the Dr. Doolittles. It's pretty funny.
Mark, I love that story. That's
Riff Raff.
adorable.
In college, I played football in college. So here's a big football player walking with 2 ducks to class. And my roommates, we had a real small house we lived in, and one of the guys lived downstairs. It was kind of like a half basement and had windows, and he used to drive him crazy. The ducks would peck on his window in the morning when he was trying to sleep. Riff and Raff, yeah.
I love that.
Okay, one last thing, and actually 2 last things. One is, I read on the website that Jay now has these vegan recipes and cooking classes or whatever he's doing. By the way, he's just, even though he's in the background, he should be in the foreground, because first of all, your guys' love story is amazing. I love everything about it, and it takes a village, but you 2 guys seem to be 2 good leaders of the village to make it happen. Talk a little bit about what he's doing. So we got to give him some creds, because obviously he's doing some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, he really is a hero. So if you go to gentlebarn.org, on the homepage, there's a little section called My Gentle Kitchen. And if you go in there, there's recipes, there's videos, there's all kinds of support for a vegan diet. So Jay is a vegan chef, trained by Cordon Bleu, and he really studied it way before he met me, way before we met.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's a Cordon Bleu trained chef. And then, of course, when he met me and went vegan, he's adapted all of his recipes to vegan recipes, which is easier to do than you think. And the dishes that he makes and the way that he balances nutrition with ease and with taste, he's an absolute expert. And so check out My Gentle Kitchen on the website gentlebarn.org, because he's really sharing a lot to really try to encourage people and support people in their journey to gentleness. He also, people can follow him in his own right on his own social media pages by just going to J.L. Weiner, Weiner. And he has recipes, he has beautiful pictures. He's working on a vegan cookbook that's going to
Oh, great.
it's going to talk about all the vegan recipes, but it's also going to incorporate his rescue stories of the animals that he saved here at the Gentle Barn.
Well, that's a brilliant idea. That's, what most people, I'm sure they're listening now, plant-based diets are huge. A lot of professional athletes that literally have chefs that are doing plant-based diets. They talk there's all kinds of stories out there of the benefits of plant-based diets.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's irrefutable at this point. The World Wide Health Organization has already proven that meat and dairy is a carcinogen. And Europe, because of that study, has grossly reduced their amount of animal products, while America is still blindly and blissfully skipping along eating animal products, and our rate of Western disease is skyrocketing. So I think anyone that wants to be fit and healthy, anyone that cares about animals, and anyone that cares about this planet is someone that's going to have a hard look at going vegan, because that is the solution and it is the future.
Well, that's not even addressing the methane thing either as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's huge environmental reasons.
Okay, so let's do this. I know you mentioned it, but for anybody that wants to help you guys out, volunteer, learn more about you, can you kind of give them all the different ways they can get a hold of you guys, find you? I found you, but let them know that, and then we'll do my favorite thing at the end.
Absolutely. So anyone that wants to know more of the story of why and how we got started and what we do, they can read the book just like you did. It's called My Gentle Barn, Creating a Sanctuary Where Animals Heal and Children Learn to Hope. And it's available anywhere where books are sold. And you can get a signed copy at gentlebarn.org. Check out our website, gentlebarn.org. Find a Gentle Barn near you to come and visit. Hug the cows, cuddle the turkeys, hold the chickens, pet the goats and sheep, hear their stories of resilience, and leave feeling more connected to nature, animals, and yourself. You can follow The Gentle Barn on all social media platforms by just going to The Gentle Barn. And we can't do this work without you. So if you want to sponsor an animal or make a donation, we sure would be grateful. The more help that we get from the community, the more animals we can save, the more programs we can roll out for hurting humans, and the more impact we can have on our communities.
And let me add one more thing too. If you want to see a lot of like shorts on there, you guys have a really good YouTube channel as well that people can go to and see. You can hear about Karma, the cow. You can hear about Dudley. You can learn about Winston, who doesn't like have his toenails trimmed. I think that was hilarious. Where he's screaming when he's on his back was one of my favorite ones to see. But if you guys want to see some really cool stuff that these guys are doing, great. Now, lastly, it's that time. I know some of you guys that listen are going to cringe. I've got my joke again. My favorite tell a animal joke. And because you guys do so much with cows, I have a cow joke for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Why are cows awesome dancers?
Why?
Because they have all the right moves. And lastly, I was going to tell you earlier. So do you know the Italian word for cow?
No, what is it?
It's my favorite one, mucca, Mucca, mucca.
Oh my God.
It's an easy one to remember. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think we should even name a cow Muka.
Well, then you can name it after me now. I mean, I guess Ellie got to name some once, and I'm going to try and see one here shortly in the things. But Ellie, first off, I know I've taken way more time than I said I would, but I just been dying to talk to you. Now I could have left you on here forever, but I'm sure people get bored hearing my voice. But really, really, you're doing amazing things. Your story is one that people should really listen to and learn and realize what these guys give us out there other than the normal things. And I'm just glad I'm getting to know you guys. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I also think that you and I could have talked for 17 hours and it's been really great. You asked wonderful questions. You added beautiful stories. It was a pleasure to get to know you and to be on your show. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
Oh, you're stuck with me now, really.
Oh, Mark, I wanted to tell you one more thing.
Oh, sure.
My second book comes out in May, and it's called Cow Hug Therapy, How the Gentle Barn Animals Taught Me Everything About Life, Death, and Everything in Between.
Well, it's so funny about that. I was going to ask you when we were talking before we started recording, you've got to have a sequel to the book. If it's too soon into Santa Clarita, you hadn't gone that far yet. So I was going to tell you, so I'm glad you did it. That's so funny. That's great.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. It's beautiful stories of all these incredible animals and how they taught me everything. So you'll get to know the animals and you'll hear their stories and their trials and their triumphs and their lessons. And it's all about how the animals taught me about self-care and mental health and how to recover from grief. I can't wait to share it.
Oh, well, first of all, the first book kind of gets into some of that. I mean, you get to know what I love about the first book is you really get to learn personally get to know some of the animals that you had early on. I know even your first one, Puff, which I kept saying Puff the Magic Dragon, but all the Mary to Karma, and I'm trying to remember. There's so many that I got to know all of them through your book, and it's really worth reading if you guys if you want to hear all about it. The first book's good, and I can't wait to get to the second one. But lastly, to everybody that's out listening, please continue listening. If you've got a better joke, because I know I can use some better jokes, and you want to actually be on the show, you can have your kids call in or whatever. Send me an email to mkyle@forrealpodcast.com, and I'll put anybody on. Send me an email. I'd love to have your kids on, yourself on. You've got a great story that should get out there. Let me know. I'll get back to you. I promise that. And lastly, again, Ellie, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark.
It's been great. We're supported by Let's Walk, that's here to love your animals like our own.
Austin, Houston, and Denver. Let's Walk is here to love your animals like our own. From daily walks, play, in-house sleepovers, and more. Go to work, out on the town, or take a vacation knowing your pets are in the best hands. This woman-owned small business does it all. Check us out on Instagram at Let's Walk Austin, Houston, and Denver.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.